Caleb Stokes. Welcome to Lessons from Learning Leaders. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Duane. It's good to see you. I haven't seen that face in a while.
It has been. I was hoping to catch up with you. We had Matt Hurt on the podcast not long ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
I know you and him were sharing a drink there at Four Courts in Arlington, and I'm sorry I missed that.
I'm just glad Four Courts is back open.
Yeah, no kidding. So you and Matt Hurt have a long history with me, close to getting me fired more than once. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to a memory of you. We went to, this was, I think, the first time we trained together. We went to Mississippi.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'd never been to Mississippi, and I'd never seen you train. And I enjoyed watching you train, but I had never seen someone who had memorized their presentation. And it was incredible to watch. My favorite memory of that, though, was after it was all done, you said, "Wow, Duane, you're now my new favorite trainer." I don't know if you remember saying that or not.
I don't think I ever said that, but
no, I'm pretty sure you did. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you said, because I was like, wow, that's high praise. But going back to the fact that you memorized this, that goes back to your acting days, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. And it really goes back to a time in the summer of 2011. I was auditioning for a role. I was in a old kind of dilapidated building with no air conditions in Hell's City, or I'm sorry, in New York City, Hell's Kitchen. And I remember it was for a play called Cobb. It was about Ty Cobb, the baseball player. And I had received my sides the night before. It's basically just the script that you're going to utilize in the audition the next day. And I remember I'm holding the sides. It's totally cool to hold the script in the middle of an audition, but nothing felt like it was sticking. It didn't really feel like I was doing a great job. And the guy who I was auditioning with, he was hitting a home run, and he had no script in his hand. And he looked a little familiar to me, and I was like, okay, he's doing well. I'm not gelling necessarily. I'm obviously not going to get a call back, and this guy is. So I was in the restroom afterwards, washing my face and changing back into my street clothes. And he comes in, and I recognized that he's Christopher Sieber. Christopher Sieber, been on Broadway many times. He's been nominated for 2 Tony Awards, including Shrek, the musical. He was the original Lord Farquaad, so he had to be on his knees singing and dancing the entire show, and he was nominated for that too. And I just said, you seem perfect for this role. What exactly is it that you do in order to prepare? And he said, I was up all night. I memorized the script. I studied it. I rehearsed it. I probably got 2 hours of rest. And after I memorized the script, I made sure that I went over my lines while I was standing in the kitchen. I went over my lines while I was in the shower. I went over my lines while I was in the subway. I went over my lines here. In every different, scenario, in every different environment. And he said that it puts me in a state of coherence, which is ultimately where you know the material so well. It allows you to really be in the moment and understand what your other acting partner is doing. Or if you're giving a training or a speech, knowing the material so well and then being able to read different audience members, knowing when you need to cue into them if they have certain questions, knowing when you might need to settle down some folks who are creating a ruckus in the back of the room, whatever it is. He said, if you can find a way in a performative sense to be in a state of coherence, where you feel so comfortable with the material that allows you to focus on everything else going on in the room, that is when the confidence actually shows to your audience. And I took that to heart, and I do it as much as I can. And I believe that you are probably the best trainer I've ever watched, and your facilitation is phenomenal. But no, really. As a trainer, I cannot facilitate unless I'm in that state of coherence. So I'm able to utilize your techniques of facilitation only because I know the material so damn well, like the back of my hand. And that conversation with Christopher Sieber, one that I will always remember, and he cannot recollect at all.
Maybe the most important bathroom conversation in the history of training.
Could have been, potentially. But no, it played a big impact for me in the importance of why you need to rehearse, not just to be in a play or to do a scene in acting class, but, if you're a trainer, people are relying on you in order to learn something and to better themselves. And so it's worth being in that state of coherence so that you can feel more comfortable in the situation, be a better trainer, be a better speaker.
We heard Arthur Brooks say something very similar to that once when we had the pleasure of hearing him speak. And he talked about the fact that he only gave maybe 2 or 3 different presentations a year. And he was so dialed in and preparing those. And when I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I could give 2 or 3 different presentations in a week. And then the next week, give 3 completely different presentations. It's rare. I mean, I was blessed over the past couple of years that in doing my conferences, all I was doing was one. I was doing one presentation for like 2 or 3 years straight because I was getting to go over. I was going to a lot of different places. And so a lot of different people hadn't seen this presentation. But what I liked about it is the people who had seen it, when I came back, they came back as well. They said that was really good. I wanted to see it again. Do you have any advice for folks that hear that, oh, you've got to practice it till you know it, who are in that same situation where they're going to be giving a lot of different trainings? How do you prepare when you're being given a different script every day?
Well, first and foremost, when you do have to give the same presentation over and over and over and over, one might think that it's easier that way. I would make the case that it's actually more difficult that way. Take a look at like Hamlet, for instance. Hamlet's been done thousands of different ways. And if I'm an actor, I might wind up having to be Hamlet 8 times a week for 8 years. Like, how do I take something that I know so well and make it so fresh and make it at least seem fresh? I think that is far more difficult than being given so many different trainings or presentations that you might have to give over the course of several weeks. However, to your question, it's again relying on, yes, rehearsal, but also the confidence that you're going to be able to do it and do it well. One of our former colleagues always said that you could always train to teach somebody to build an automobile if you just have a couple hours to study it and then the opportunity to actually teach that. And it's very true, because you as a trainer or you as a presenter, whatever it might be, if you can get into that state of coherence, you can easily understand what audience members are wanting to know and when they're wanting to know it. And you basically break it out into a larger conversation.
I didn't get to ask you your story. How did you get from the stage into training?
It was a bit of a mistake, but it was a good mistake. So I was in grad school, actually, at Brown, and I was visiting my then girlfriend, now my wife, in Mississippi. In order to get to Mississippi, the only way is Memphis, Tennessee. And so I was at a bar in Memphis, Tennessee, and I ran into an individual from HR from the former organization for whom I used to work. And she said, "Oh, you're an actor and you're politically inclined. Well, we're looking for people who don't mind standing up in front of groups of people and giving presentations and trainings." And I was like, okay, well, I could either pay money and go to school for 2 more years, or I can go to work right now. And it just seemed kind of like the glove fit.
Excellent. And you took that and were part of the group that actually created the public speaking course in the organization. And so you took what you learned in acting and applied it to this program. So we talked about preparation. So you've got the preparation. You've really dialed in. You know what you're talking about. What's the next step? I mean, it would be easy to just go in, like you said, give this bland to be or not to be. That is a question.
Oh, man, you're so cultured.
Yeah.
Were you still going on with that? Did I interrupt you?
You did. I used to know the entire soliloquy because Hamlet is my favorite Shakespearean play. But I'll allow the interruption because we're here to learn from you, not to hear me give the worst rendition of that soliloquy.
Well, I think the next stage is once you're there, even if you know the material really well, it's your job to sound like you know the material. And sometimes even if you don't understand what you're presenting, if you can sort of put on a good show, that always creates sort of a level of comfort that allows the presentation or training to go well. For me, it really comes from inflection, and inflection in the voice. Inflection is just a modulation of our pitch in our voice. We have this lower inflection here all the way up to the higher inflection in our sort of head voice, that higher upper register. When we're passionate about something, when we're in the middle of a debate, whatever it might be, we're using that higher register. We're using higher pitch. So if we're talking about something about which we're passionate, we're not going to be down here and say, oh, I love America. God bless America. No, we're going to be up here. God bless America. This is what we need to do. So even if it's something, that you might not necessarily be as confident about, you still can sound certainly very confident. And it all really boils down to inflection. And yes, we do want that rising inflection. We want to speak in our head voice, but we also want to make sure we utilize falling inflection as well. It's varying inflection in our voice. Falling inflection is something for declarative statements. I can't speak, Duane. What's that word? Declarative. Thank you. When you're declaring something, read my lips, no new taxes. That's falling inflection. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. That's falling inflection. You can't handle the truth. It's when you're declaring something, even if it's like Michael Bolton is the greatest singer from the 1980s. It's falling inflection. It's
You're going to
something
put it just in that one decade?
Michael Bolton is the greatest singer of all time.
Okay.
Again, it's that falling inflection. So yes, we do want rising inflection. I'm going to the store. I'm going to buy some bread. I'm going to buy some milk. I'm going to buy some butter. Everybody's cheering. But at the same time, if you're declaring something, I'm going to go to the store and buy bread. I'm going to buy milk. I'm going to buy butter. Either way, both of them work, just depending on what the line is in your speech. But relying on varying inflection can do a lot in your performance, in your speech or your training.
When you go back and you look at the classic, when you communicate, they say that just a small fraction of it is actually the words that you say. A lot of it is your body language, and a lot of it is your voice, like you said. So if you go into a presentation and you say, hey, everyone, it's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to giving this presentation. Anybody have any questions? I mean, what are you really communicating there?
Yeah, that's falling inflection over and over and over. And what we want to work on is finding ways where we can have more rising inflection, because when we speak in that upper register, that's what people are listening to, because it demonstrates I'm passionate on what I'm talking about. So a great way to practice this is actually counting, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you want to reset. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Reset. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Reset. And when we're practicing rising and falling inflection, this specifically is rising, we always want to make sure that we reset. Barack Obama, excellent orator. No question about it, one of the best in American politics. But he struggles with the reset. That's why you always hear a lot of people making fun of Obama saying, well, I'm going to do it, and keep going up rather than reset. It's good to have that passionate rising inflection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then we reset. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Are you resetting all the way back to 1?
You can.
Are you like going to 5 and then resetting to 3?
You can. I mean, it's good to vary it and do it differently. It's also good to do it the opposite way in terms of falling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Reset. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
When do you use this? Is this something you use throughout the presentation, or is this something you want to reserve for when there are crucial points that the people need to remember?
I use it throughout. Now, that rising inflection is throughout the entire presentation or speech. In terms of making the statement that we want to drive home, really, that is what I want to make sure is sort of memorized when we're, read my lips, no new taxes. if there are a few lines like that in your speech that are going to stand out, and probably needs to be delivered the exact same way every single time. Those important lines, at least. Now, the other lines you can continue to play with. I would say go watch Arthur Brooks. You brought him up earlier. Arthur Brooks's inflection is wonderful. He speaks way up here, he speaks way down here, and it is not monotonous at all. It demonstrates true passion throughout the entire speech. Watch Arthur. I actually think Arthur Brooks is one of the best public speakers in America right now.
I'm trying to figure out how you could use upward inflection with stuff that you're just not excited about, though. I'm thinking about all the folks out there who are doing this bland compliance training and nobody in the room's excited about it. And, yeah, just that, okay, what you have to do is remember, you got to call HR.
Well, now that's, yeah. So that's the extreme, right? We want to go to these extremes when we're practicing. But when we're giving a presentation about going to HR, maybe we're not going exactly that high. But pretty much, yeah, there are a lot of bland presentations that I've had to give. But if I at least seem like I'm excited, and trust me, I'm not. There are many times where I give a training where I am not excited to be there at all. It might be the 150th time I've given that training. But if I do utilize inflection, maybe not as extreme as you just did, it makes me seem like I'm at least in a good mood and I'm happy to be there. And that's far better than someone who is just saying, ba, 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 ba.
Thinking about how I just did that to that extreme, it really reminded me of Jerry Seinfeld, how he would start and then just, talking to George or Kramer, he'd be like, come on, we gotta, he was way up there.
So sitcoms use it brilliantly, and so do actors. A lot of it comes from sitcoms and comedy. Look at Abbott and Costello, right? Basically, they're playing a game of tennis. It's like there's a ball of energy in the air, and these two actors on stage are trying to keep the energy afloat. They're hitting it back and forth, back and forth. Who's on first? What's on second? I don't know. He's on third. I don't give a darn. It continues to rise, or at least continues to stay in that upper register. Seinfeld's a great example of that. Big Bang Theory, those guys do it great. Everybody Loves Raymond, very much in that upper register. Almost every conversation Ray and Brad Garrett are having, and it's so funny because Brad Garrett's character, he has this big, deep voice, so you're thinking, oh, he's not going to utilize inflection, but he's always yelling, Amy, oh, what am I doing? He's always up in his upper register as well, because that's how we talk when we're excited. And in a lot of comedic scenes, people are excited.
So we talked about preparation. We talked about inflection, being deliberate in that inflection. What else do we need to worry about from an acting perspective?
I mean, we can worry about a lot of things. One thing that I would say I utilize in every training that I give, I want to make a connection with people in the room, and I want them not necessarily to remember me or my story, but hopefully they do, but understand that by me sharing my story and my why, that I am not up there just to do a song and a dance. I'm up there as a human to connect with them and teach them something. And when I say my why, I'm basically talking about my super objective, which again is coming from a theatrical standpoint. So Konstantin Stanislavski, he was the foremost theater director in the late 19th, early 20th centuries. And Stanislavski created this system of acting that he brought from Moscow to America. Many different interpretations, whether it's method acting or Sanford Meisner's approach, so many different interpretations of Stanislavski's work. But ultimately, every single American actor, whether it's Sidney Poitier or Shia LaBeouf, they all utilize Stanislavski's system to some degree, especially in terms of what's called the super objective. If I'm sitting down with a play, the first thing I'm going to ask myself is, what is my character's super objective? Meaning, what is my character's why? Why does my character wake up and go to work in the morning? Why does my character make sure there's food on the table for his family? Why does my character go to church? Why is my character existing? And in every scene throughout the play, I have to demonstrate somehow that why. And it's just like us in every day as human beings. Every day we wake up and say, why am I going to work? Or why am I going to school? Or why am I taking my family to church? Every action that we take is either to protect our super objective or get us one step closer to achieving our super objective. And that's your why. Simon Sinek talks about this all the time. People don't care what you do. They care why you do it. So if you are in that situation where you're a trainer and the boring HR presentation is there, if you are a human being and you're somehow demonstrating your why, then you're connecting with your audience outside of the world of HR. That builds a level of trust. So they'll be able to trust you with any questions they have. They trust you that the material they're receiving is something that's appropriate, but it's sharing your why or the character's super objective. I've got a 2.5-year-old son down the hall in the room with his mom right now. And my goal, my why, is to be as good a parent as my mom and dad are for me. And in every training that I give, it's based off of that. And that is shared in every single training, whether it's through stories, personal experience, what have you. But starting with the why. People care, they don't care what you do, they care why you do it.
So there's this stereotypical scene where generally you're trying to make fun of this pretentious actor, and they're always like, what's my motivation? It seems like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, you're a rock, just stand there. But what's the rock's motivation?
Yeah.
I mean, why am I a rock?
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what you're talking about.
That's it with the super objective. You just ask yourself why. Why? You and I have done this exercise together several times. And eventually I get to the place, why did I go to New York to be an actor? I wanted to be famous. Why did I want to be famous? I wanted people to like me. Why did I want people to like me? I wanted to impress girls. Why did I want to impress girls? I want a great wife. Why did I want a great wife? I want beautiful kids. Why do I want beautiful kids? I want to be as good a parent as my mom and dad are for me. There we go. Everything I do gets down to my why. And if I am that rock, or if I'm tree number 3, at least it gives me something to think about while I'm standing still on stage in front of 800 people. But if you're able to successfully share your why, and I like to begin presentations and trainings with my why, it allows me to connect better with the audience. It's a cue, because my why is a cue that kind of resonates with many different folks, whether they are parents, they want to be parents, they know people who are parents, they understand me better, and it creates a level of trust. So if I can have a trusted relationship right off the bat with the audience, the training is going to go better.
Tell me what you mean by cues, because you were actually the first one who kind of brought this term to my lexicon.
Yeah.
And in acting, you think, well, that's my cue. That's when I need to go. That's when I need to start my part of this. But I'm not sure that that's exactly what you mean.
So not exactly, but similar to. A cue is a shared opinion, shared experience, a commonality that you have with any other individual. I was on an elevator with an older woman just a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to her, and I said, oh, well, I was in theater for a while. She says, oh, my grandson is studying theater at Auburn. I provided a cue. She picked up on the cue. So not only do we know that we have that kind of theatrical connection, but I went to Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. That is an SEC rival of Auburn. So then we began talking about college football off of that. All of these commonalities are cues. I picked up on the cue. I heard that her grandson went to Auburn. That allowed me to say, oh, okay, I'm an Ole Miss guy. I've been to Auburn. Okay, we can talk about this. It's what we do every day, whether we realize it or not, providing cues and picking up on cues. And you just need to make sure that you're providing the appropriate cues to your audience in order to connect with them on a more trusted level.
Did that conversation on the elevator end with the shared celebration of the retirement of Nick Saban?
Oh, man. Probably on her part. I will say this. it has been tough watching Nick Saban, destroy every other SEC team over the past 23 years. But man, that guy deserves all the credit. The
Yep.
GOAT. The GOAT.
We have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't yet?
I think I did math wrong. I think it was 17 years, not 23.
Okay.
One thing I would want to touch on for a second is just the importance of sharing stories. A lot of folks tend to believe that if they're leading a training, not giving a speech, not giving a presentation, but leading a training, that stories don't play a part. That it is. I'm a big fan of facilitation. I'm a big fan of breakouts. I'm a big fan of role playing. I'm a big fan of making sure that adult learners are brought in together every 7 or 8 minutes, like Bob Pike used to teach us. But it's also good to connect with them on the level of stories. Stories are innate in human beings. It's who we are. When I was scared of the monster under my bed, my mom would come in and read me a story. When I am trying to learn and better myself, I tend to watch documentaries that share stories about individuals who have overcome certain obstacles and adversities in their life. We are built on stories. We're run on stories. And if you have an hour to give a training, at least 10% of all time training should be spent on stories, because stories are relatable and they're memorable. And when I say relatable, the example I give all the time is I worked at a humane society when I was in college. And Duane, I love animals. If you wrote down on a piece of paper every stray cat or stray dog that died in America last year, I might be sad about it, but I'm not going to necessarily do anything about it. However, when I turn on my television and I hear "In the Arms of the Angel" and I see the shivering chihuahua behind a steel cage, they get my quarter a day, because it humanizes the issue for me. It makes me think of my dog, Carson, rather than just a number. Our goal, whether we're speaking, whether we're presenting, whether we're training, is to lead people to take some type of action. Buy this product, vote for this person, improve myself by doing this homework when I get home. All of it is based on action.
Imagine how much of your money they'd get if they got Michael Bolton to sing for their commercials.
A ton. I don't know if anyone can afford him.
I was thinking while you were talking, something I read just recently. I don't remember what book it was in, but it stuck with me. And the quote was, "The shortest distance between two people is a story."
I love
that. You can have it. I stole it from someone else. And I think that is very profound. I have to give a new training this coming week. I've seen people give the training, but that person who used to do that training has gone on to seek fulfillment elsewhere and left no facilitator's guide. So I'm looking at it going, okay, how am I going to teach this? I looked at the points of what need to be taught, and I thought, I will just tell the story of how I've done this, because it's easy to say, here's the process. But when you can say, here's what I did, here, let me tell you this story. And now, not only do they see how this works, but it shows them it can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great example of cueing in. A story is a way to cue. I mean, and that's what cueing into folks leads to relationships, and it leads to trusted relationships. And that's the entire purpose. And I'd say when you are having to do 3 different trainings this week and 3 different trainings next week, if you can build trust through a story, that's, and also, on a more practical side, you're talking about facilitator's guide. If I'm training, I'll hold a facilitator's guide. I don't care. It's not my job to necessarily put on a show. I just enjoy putting on a show. But, if I have that facilitator's guide in my hand, so what? I mean, as long as folks in the audience are having the light bulbs and they're deciding to use those light bulbs, I don't care if I'm holding a script or not.
So, Caleb, where can someone get in touch with you in case they want to have you come and consult with their entire company on how to be a better public speaker?
I would say I am the lesser half of a group called the Grassroots Chronicles at the Yard Sign Network. Grassroots Chronicles at the Yard Sign Network. We have a podcast that you can find on Apple, iTunes, Spotify. You can also visit our website at thegrassrootschronicles.com. But mostly, just go to Duane. Duane will connect us.
That's what I do. I am a super connector, or try to be.
Oh, great book.
Yeah. Well,
So you've read at least a couple of those books behind you then, right?
a few. I've got I just put on the Substack 10 books that people should read this year if you're a new trainer. One of them
What are
I
they?
recommend to you. You remember this one?
Pin Drop Principle. I have 2 copies of that book. That's a phenomenal book. And they get into the super objective a lot as well, and the importance of sharing stories.
Yeah, great book. That's what I'd seen what you did, and I really started digging into the book, reinforced a lot of what you did. So it's a great book. But yeah, hey, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. I will go ahead and link up to the podcast and YouTube and the website and all that in the show notes. And appreciate you taking the time, man. Really do.
Yeah, good seeing you, Duane.